Joining me in the studio right now are Melissa Amorello. She is one of the co-founders of Social Snakes. She has a master's degree in biology. Also here is Jeff Smith. He is the other co-founder of Social Snakes, and he has a master's in ecology. And thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So let's begin with the history of Social Snakes. First of all, why the name and why this organization, Melissa?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So Social Snakes is a local to Tucson nonprofit snake conservation group, and our approach to snake conservation is through education. As I'm sure most people are aware, snakes have a bad reputation, and that reputation is based largely on myth and misunderstanding. So at Social Snakes, what we're trying to do is give them a better reputation that is more accurate based on fact. So we use a lot of remote videography to show people what snakes are really like, what their behavior is really like in the field, especially when people aren't around to scare them and make them act defensively.
And Jeff, why your involvement in this organization? Why is this something you believe in?
We spent a number of years doing science, field work on animals, and my goal was always to kind of help them to do conservation-related work. And so we've worked on a number of projects in different states on snakes mostly, turtles and lizards and things like that. And it really became clear talking to people that, you know, if people don't care about the animals that you're interested in, you know, and sometimes some of these species were endangered, threatened, there's not a lot of recourse. So we felt like there was a big gap in sort of what the information about these animals, the way that we understood these animals and what the general public understood. So we thought, you know, we can take our work and we can show people through the magic of the internet, you know, what these animals are actually doing, and it's really been well received, and so we're really excited about continuing.
We do focus on rattlesnakes. I mean, we care about all snakes, but we focus on rattlesnakes because we're in Arizona and they have, you know, probably the worst reputation of all. But on the other hand, rattlesnakes exhibit a lot of behaviors that are very much like humans, more so than other snakes. And they're behaviors that we find very appealing too. So for instance, rattlesnakes give birth to live young, and they take care of those babies for 2 weeks. And we've even seen at some of the communal den sites that we study where mothers and their offspring from previous years will still be hanging out together. So there may be some more long-term bonds that extend past those 2 weeks. They sometimes live in social groups, at least part of the year, and some of those groups are composed of extended families. So those are all things that people can relate to and make them more familiar. And then from an ecological standpoint, of course, rattlesnakes do play an important role in the environment, like all native wild animals do.
And Jeff, you and Melissa came across a scenario that prompted you partly to form this organization in which many rattlesnakes had been killed.
Right. We didn't know it at the time. You know, we had our field work and our science objectives, but we had some friends that had convinced us to take a step back and begin to look at a aggregation, a den site of diamondback rattlesnakes. And we watched them. We began to watch them intensively and not mess with them. You know, just photographs. And we had visited the site about 4 or 5 times. And a few days had elapsed and we went back out. We had about 14 animals we were watching there. And some quail hunters had come by, what we think were quail hunters based on the shells that they had left, and killed almost every snake in there, dragged them out and, you know, cut the rattles off their bodies. And this is something that is completely unnecessary. It was a den that was located far from where, you know, these snakes would be hurting people. It's not near houses or anything like that. So, you know, we were shocked, we were dismayed, we really felt badly about it, and we didn't know at the time that there was much we could do about it. You know, that story kind of stayed with us and sort of you know, made us maybe double down on our work to try to show people that these animals are interesting and important.
And that was back in 2004, that's correct?
Yes.
Right. That was,
Okay, in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And Melissa, so how tough is, quote, the sell? We were talking about emotional appeals. Does that work when it comes to reptiles, and specifically rattlesnakes?
Yeah, it is a tough one. And when I first brought that idea by some of my mentors in graduate school, you know, I got laughed at, but it's something that's been tried with every other animal, animals that in some cases pose a greater threat to humans than snakes, but there's just something about snakes, some carnal response that we have, but it can be negative or positive. And so, especially with kids, it's pretty easy to make that a positive response. But even with adults, you know, when I've gone out and give presentations, and we do in-person presentations for free, and we show videos of what these snakes are really like, and you know, you'll have somebody who said that they walked into that presentation and they thought snakes were creepy, they thought they were gross, they slimy, whatever. It does start to change minds. And you know, I've never had anyone say like, oh no, I love them 100%, but you know, they think about them in a different way. And so that may be all the difference between, you know, if they saw a rattlesnake in their yard, just grabbing a shovel and chopping its head off, to maybe giving it a few minutes to move away on its own. And it's huge. I mean, snakes are subjected to a lot of wanton killing based on this. And you know, the story of that den site, it was pretty small on the scale of snake populations, and you know, it was a dozen snakes, and that scenario is played out 1,000-fold every year at rattlesnake roundups, where not in Arizona, but in other states, thousands of rattlesnakes are rounded up and tortured and killed, and it's all based on just weird ideas about the danger they pose to humans and cattle, and that they're going to be overrun. And you know, I mean, certainly rattlesnakes are not uncommon in Arizona, but we haven't had roundups here for many, many years. We're not exactly overrun with rattlesnakes either.
Okay, Melissa Amorello and Jeff Smith, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.